It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. A slap in the face to the British public. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman's verdict as legal migration to the UK hits a new record. Almost 750,000 more people arrived in the UK than left last year, dwarfing the number who arrived illegally in small boats. Critics say today's figures are proof that legal migration is out of control and socially and economically damaging. Also ahead, more on our investigation into the state of British prisons from our home editor Jason Farrell. He speaks to a woman who has just been released to hear her experience of life behind bars. We'll bring you the footage of an incredible rescue as a crane driver lifts 2 workmen from a burning tower block in Reading. And I'll be speaking to the manager of Bromley FC as the club launches a competition to find a new analyst with the help of the computer game Football Manager. All that to come, much more on the UK Tonight. Well, our top story tonight, net migration hitting a record high last year. Almost 750,000 more people arrived in the UK than left. What's more, the number has been drastically upgraded since it was published in December. The actual figure, 140,000 people higher than first thought. Rishi Sunak now facing claims that he's betrayed voters and lost control of the immigration system. But people we've spoken to today say that their lives and their businesses wouldn't work without migration. Here's our communities correspondent, Becky Johnson.
An authentic curry cooked with flair by skilled chefs from Pakistan. At this restaurant in Birmingham, they say recruitment from abroad is key to their success. Sidesh came to the UK from India on a student visa in January, but he plans to stay and work when his course ends.
I like to convert my visa to a work visa.
And how long would you like to stay?
Maybe 5 years at least. I will be staying in this country, earning good amount of money, earning good amount of respect, and learning many new things. So I'm doing it.
Without foreign workers, the manager says they'd struggle as British people don't apply when they advertise.
People are not interested to come into the hospitality sector as a waiter, as a chef.
And at this nearby garage, they've been trying to recruit a mechanic locally for 2 years with no success.
Trying to hire a mechanic is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Because if you're a mechanic and you're from the UK, you become self-employed. Why would you want to be employed?
It means he's now looking in Pakistan.
We can give somebody an opportunity to get out of a life of poverty and help bring his family here.
But the ever-increasing numbers of immigrants are politically problematic for the Conservative Party. Record numbers of people are coming to the UK via legal routes. The number of work visas handed out to people from outside the EU has soared. It dwarfs the amount of people coming in via illegal routes like small boats and poses a big problem for a government that has promised to get net migration down. A pledge many voters will judge them on. What would you like to see the government do?
That's the reason why we came out of Brexit, wasn't it? For this reason, So it needs clamping down more than it. So.
The country needs skilled workers, so legal migration, I'm all in favour.
We are obviously bursting at the seam here, so we expect the government to step up and do something, don't we?
The row over how to stop small boats crossing the channel has masked a much greater number of people coming to the country legally. And for a government eyeing an election, the figures are heading in the wrong direction. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Birmingham.
That's what the people of Birmingham say. We know what some of the critics are saying. What's the government saying? Here's our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's following the story for us tonight in Westminster. John.
Well, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has been accused by critics on his own side, more than as well as the opposition, of complacency, really, a rather smug response. That's because he said today that the new figure is not showing a significant increase from last year's figures and is largely in line with our own immigration statistics. Well, that has not pleased many Conservatives who, of course, remember the pledges made by Tory leaders going back to David Cameron. Just to remind you, David Cameron talked about getting immigration down to tens of thousands. Boris Johnson talked about getting it down to 250,000. Mr. Sunak, while he hasn't put any numbers on this, has talked about bringing the numbers down. Well, the Tories clearly are failing to do that. If you look at the breakdown of the figures, most of these people come here to work. Then, of course, there's all the student visas. You need to, of course, add in a number of people coming from Ukraine and Hong Kong as well, which have pushed the numbers to their current levels. Now, the toughest and harshest criticism came not from opposition MPs, but from the recent former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. She hit out saying that we were elected on a pledge to reduce net migration, which was 229,000 in 2019. That was the last general election. She says that today's record numbers are a slap in the face to the British public, who voted to control and reduce migration at every opportunity. She says we must act now to reduce migration to what she calls sustainable levels. Now, in response to that, what Mr. Cleverly says is that the government is working on further measures to prevent exploitation and manipulation of the visa system, he says. Now, clamping down on those that take advantage of the flexibility of the immigration system, he says. And he says there'll be details in the due course. We are expecting a crackdown on visas, particularly for students, dependents of visas. That's on top of the new Rwanda treaty, of course, and the new legislation on Rwanda. But many Tory MPs are furious. And, of course, the Tories are looking over their shoulder at Richard Tice's Reform Party, currently polling around 10%. Jonathan Gullis, just to give you an example of backbench anger, these figures are completely unacceptable, and to the majority of the British people, we must take drastic action as well as stopping the boats.
John, thank you. John Craig with the latest in Westminster. Now, the Qatari government says the truce in the Israel-Hamas war will start tomorrow morning. It's going to mean a break in Israel's combat operations in Gaza and the release of some of the Israeli hostages taken by Hamas on the 7th of October. 13 hostages, we understand, are due to be freed tomorrow morning, with more to come in the following days. My guest here in the studio tonight is Stephen Brisley. Stephen's sister, Leanne Sharabi, was killed when Hamas attacked in October, when they attacked the Be'eri kibbutz. She was killed along with her teenage daughters, Noya and Yahel. Steve's brother-in-law, Eli, was taken hostage along with his brother and his family. Steve, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
OK, so we have some good news in terms of the start of hostages being released tomorrow morning. How are you feeling?
Not particularly positive at the moment because I think being realistic, Eli and his brother Yossi will be at probably near the end of a very long list of hostages, as you know, men in their 50s. Obviously it's encouraging. We want all the hostages home. It's encouraging that that women and children are being apparently the first tranche to be released, but we've got no idea when or if Eli and Yossi will be brought home.
What's this like to live with? Because, as you said, this is a step forward. This is some kind of hope, the hope that you've been desperate for since you had the awful news about your sister and your nieces. But it's the drip feed, isn't it? It's 13 one day, some the next. And this deal is so fragile and everything is so sensitive. What's it like to live through?
It's living on the edge at all times. Every time your phone pings, every time an email or a message comes through, every time my phone rings, you're not sure whether it's going to be positive news or more bad news. There's generally been a vacuum of information. The British government have not really been in contact with us directly. It's going to be 7 weeks on Saturday since the massacre happened. We've had no direct contact from the British government to let us know what, if indeed anything, they've been doing to try and secure the release of hostages.
What about your family in Israel? How have they been kept informed of what's been happening?
I think it's been difficult for them as well. I think they've been feeling similarly about the Israeli government. I think both sides we feel that we've been isolated and abandoned somewhat. I mean, I see that David Cameron has visited Kibbutzberry today, so he's set foot on the dirt that my sister's blood is soaked into. Yet neither he nor his predecessor has seen fit to meet the British families of those lost in the massacre, and the British families who are still suffering, wondering the fate of the hostages.
Is it too late for that? Would you accept a phone call at a meeting with the new Foreign Secretary, Lord David Cameron, if he were to reach out to you now? He's not long in the role.
Yeah, I mean, I find it difficult to believe that a phone call will be sufficient. Myself and other British families with British connections who have relatives who are hostages, I've been asking for a meeting with Mr. Cameron, with Mr. Cleverly, with a junior minister, perhaps. We've had no substantive reply to any of those requests. Myself and other British-based families spoke at the Palace of Westminster to a group of 50 or 60 MPs just last week, and the feeling in the room was that embassy and consular services need to do more, the Foreign Office need to do more, and yet more than a week on, still heard nothing.
You need support now, but you're going to need support going forward, because the positive outcome from all of this horror for you is to have Ellie and his brother and family released from Gaza. But after that, does your brother-in-law know what has happened to his wife and daughters?
We're not really too sure. All we know is that Leanne Nguyen-Yahel died at the scene. We're not sure whether Ellie saw what happened. We don't really know the exact circumstances surrounding it. We're living with this every day. We're going to live with it every day for the rest of our lives. I think it's the information vacuum that compounds that. I think my concern is that Leanne Nguyen-Yahel were British citizens. Ellie and Yossi have a British family. That link was not extinguished with my sister's life being extinguished. And I feel that the British government need to do more to engage with us, to reassure us of what's being done, to reassure us of what they're doing going forward. Because as things stand, I have no reassurance whatsoever that the British government have been doing anything, are doing anything, propose to do anything that will bring Ellie and Yossi home.
You're finding out what the British government are doing to help the situation through the TV?
I get things on the media, we get snippets of information. I spend my life watching the news, scrolling through social media, hoping for some scrap of information, because it seems that as a British citizen and the British family of hostages, the British government don't appear to want to engage with us. We've had to go to the extent of engaging legal representation in the hope that they can get answers, that they can get a meeting with the authorities where we as simple citizens have failed. My parents wrote personally to Rishi Sunak 30 days ago, setting out their feeling of isolation and abandonment by the British government, asking if he felt that the British government had done enough and whether he felt that what they felt was a lamentable failure on the British government's part to engage with us was acceptable. That letter remains unanswered.
Steve, I mean, you're grieving your sister and your nieces, and you're still going through what is a nightmare. What support have you been getting? It's not been from the government, and that would come in the form of, as you said, practical steps, talking you through what's happening, giving you some encouragement, perhaps, that they are helping with things. But where have you found support?
We had family liaison officers from the Metropolitan Police, and they've been the sole source of comfort from the authorities. They've been fantastic. But aside from that, it's been friends, it's been family. Yeah. We've had the Jewish community reach out to us in South Wales, in London. People who 7 weeks ago were strangers have now become friends and family. I think it's something of an embarrassment that we've had to rely on the kindness of strangers rather than my own government. I work in the public sector. I pay my taxes. I'm a member of the community. Where is my government now? When will the names Leanne, Noya, Yahel, Ellie and Yossi come from the lips of a member of the British government.
Steve, I completely understand your anger, and I thank you for coming on to the programme to talk about your sister and your nieces. And we at Sky News really hope that you get to see your brother-in-law and he comes out with his family and you can start to move forward again, because at the moment, as you said, it's a state of absolute limbo. And thank you for joining us on the UK Tonight. We appreciate it. We'll keep in touch.
Thanks for the opportunity.
We're following a developing story in Ireland now. Angry clashes have been happening in Dublin tonight. This is after breaking news earlier on today. A 5-year-old girl and a woman in her 20s seriously injured in a stabbing in the city. 2 other children were injured in that attack. Now, a man in his 50s, described as a person of interest, is also in hospital with serious injuries tonight. Well, there have been violent scenes in the city. A police car and a double-decker bus set on fire. Shops, we understand, have been broken into as well. In Dublin for us, our Ireland correspondent, Stephen Murphy. Stephen, you're right in the centre of it all. What's been happening?
Well, a major policing operation is now underway in the Irish capital this evening in an attempt to wrest back control of the main thoroughfare, O'Connell Street, which is, if I just step out of the shot, at the end of this police cordon is O'Connell Street, is effectively the main street through Dublin city centre. On the left there is the primary school where that horrific attack took place earlier this lunchtime. As you mentioned, 3 young children, primary school children, attacked. 1 5-year-old girl receiving emergency treatment in hospital in a very serious condition, we are led to believe. A person of interest, as the Gardaí, the Irish police, have described him, is currently receiving hospital treatment as well. And from a very early stage this afternoon, there was much speculation on social media as to his nationality, which we cannot confirm at this stage. However, that was amplified by certain campaigners, and it has led to the scenes that we have seen later in the afternoon and right through into this evening, where Gardaí, the Irish police, have come under direct attack. I saw gangs of youths looting shops here on O'Connell Street and taking aim at the public order unit, the riot squad, firing fireworks at those police members from very close range. At least 2 double-decker buses have been set fully afire. The fuel on board those are cooking off in a series of explosions now, creating quite a surreal atmosphere. There was hundreds and hundreds of people, many wearing balaclavas, on O'Connell Street just a few short minutes ago as they looted. I saw the Asics store being looted and the Foot Locker store being looted as well. So whatever anger and outrage there was at this horrific crime perpetrated here in broad daylight has clearly bubbled over into something clearly else entirely, an expression of raw anger perhaps, and undoubtedly some antisocial elements joining in and seizing the opportunity to benefit and to carry out looting here in Dublin. But it's certainly some of the worst public disorder and worst violence that I've seen here in Dublin for many years. And the Irish police, the Gardaí, are engaged. I've seen the riot police sweep down now from the north end of O'Connell Street, trying to kettle people and trying to push them south towards the river in an attempt to disperse that crowd.
Stephen Murphy, thank you, Stephen Murphy, keeping across that developing story for us in Dublin. We'll continue to keep you up to date throughout the night here on Sky News. Now, pictures emerged earlier today of an astonishing rescue. This is after a fire at a high-rise building that was under construction in Reading. Now, a crane operator swung into action to help 2 workers escape the blaze. The fire broke out at the Station Hill development in the town centre this morning. The men then taken to hospital for treatment for smoke inhalation. I mean, just incredible scenes from Reading today. Our correspondent Sabah Chowdhury is here and has been following this story today. Sabah, I mean, that's the crane, the skill with which the crane driver got that cage down onto the platform and got the 2 workers to safety is quite literally jaw-dropping.
Honestly, dramatic scenes that we were seeing in Reading today. There were flames coming out of that building. The smoke was thick, it was black. There were 50 firefighters at the scene. And we don't know what caused the fire at this stage. The official information is yet to come out, but what we do know is that firefighters were called to the scene at about 11:30 in the morning, and 2 individuals were sent to hospital for assessments and for treatment for smoke inhalation. One of those individuals was Glenn Edwards, honestly, the hero from today. He saved a man. We can see in the pictures there, he was trapped, a fellow workman, on the building site. And what Mr. Edwards, he deserves all respect here. Mr. Edwards, what he did was he used his machinery and directed a cage towards his fellow workman and saved him, essentially, moved him away from the flames we can see there and took him away to safety. It was thanks to the bravery of Mr. Edwards, the swiftness of the fire services in Reading, the Royal Berkshire area, that there were thankfully no casualties out of events today. Just look at that
look
smoke.
how slow that is coming down. Imagine how slow that felt if you were the workman standing at the bottom waiting for it to come down with all that smoke billowing around you. It must have been terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. And Mr. Edwards himself said it was a very close call, but he's so thankful that him and his colleagues made it out alive.
Yeah, an incredible rescue today. And Saba, you saw the building after the flames had been put out, and you said to me behind the scenes, you said it was like nothing had happened, those dramatic scenes. Then when it was put out, yeah, quite the story today. Saba has been following that for us. Thank you. Still to come on the UK tonight, the Home Secretary apologises for making a derogatory comment about a Labour MP in Parliament. Also ahead, why energy bills are going to go up again in the new year. And have you heard this bird? We'll tell you all about how Britain's loudest feathered friend is making a comeback.
A really special prize. My photography shows a different perspective of the ocean. It is, in this case, a coral reef full of light. For me, it shows hope, the light that the ocean has even when everything seems dark. It was one of the most challenging photos in my career because of the way the photo was taken. For me, it was a really special moment, and now the entire world can see that moment in a picture. So for me, it's really important to be here and show this picture, right? The moment, I just enjoyed the moment. I was with a friend during a night dive because the photo was taken during a night dive at 11 p.m. With a UV light, and in this case was a really strong current. And I said to my friend, okay, you can hold the light for me. And I hold with my hand another rock. And with the other hand, I took the picture. And in that moment, I was just enjoying and trying to use the same technique as you photograph the stars, but in this case, under the ocean. So in that moment, I was just enjoying. And after, when I saw the results, I said, okay, maybe this one can be a really powerful photo. And it was, because I get selected on the Environmental Photographer of the Year. I want, with this photo, the people can be connected to the ocean, to feel closer. Every photo I took is to make that, to feel closer and closer and closer to people, to love the ocean. And after, then can take care about that, about the ocean and the species. The ocean is the most important thing we have on our planet, I think. So in each picture, I want to showcase that importance that the ocean has.
Welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. Here's what's on the way. We're going to hear a shocking account of life in a women's prison as a report finds England's jails are not equipped to deal with mentally ill female inmates. And from desktop to dugout, we'll tell you all about Bromley FC's plans to hire a gamer as part of their backroom staff. But first, we're going to take a look at some of the other stories making news in the UK tonight. And energy bills for households across the country are set to go up once again. The energy regulator Ofgem has announced that the price cap is going to go up in January, meaning a typical household will pay 5% more for their bills. That equates to around £94 over the course of a year. The new figure largely reflects higher wholesale costs that are being faced by suppliers. Police in Edinburgh are tonight on the hunt for an escaped prisoner. The inmate made their getaway at around 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon while being escorted by prison staff in the city. Police Scotland are yet to release any more details, and they haven't confirmed what areas of Edinburgh officers are searching. The Home Secretary has apologised for using unparliamentary language after using a derogatory word to describe a Labour MP. James Cleverly had been under pressure to say sorry following claims that he'd insulted Alex Cunningham's constituency of Stockton North. A source close to the Home Secretary said that he made the comment about Mr Cunningham himself rather than his constituency. And have you heard Britain's loudest bird? Sounds a bit like this. Well, it is the bittern. It's made a comeback over the winter months in London, according to conservationists. There were only 30 known breeding pairs in the UK when the London Wetlands Centre opened in Barnes back in 2000, but now there are more than 200 of them. The birds are the loudest in the UK, with the males making a far-carrying booming sound in spring, which can be heard 3 miles away. And I can still hear it now, or is it just ringing in my ears? Now, a review of women's prisons has concluded that services across the 12 institutions in England are not equipped to provide the necessary care for inmates with mental health problems. Our Home Editor, Jason Farrell, has been looking at the state of the country's prisons for us over the past couple of months. And he's been speaking to a woman who spent 4 months behind bars last year, who paints a terrifying picture of life in jail. A warning that Jason's report contains discussion about self-harm.
OK, so 14th to the 5th, cell 19, after lunch at 12:30, 2 officers were arguing with her. She was not violent. They restrained her. She was still not violent. The SO kicked her and the alarm was sounded. There were 7 officers in the end, all male, all restraining her inside her cell. No officers put the body cams on, kicked her in the chest.
Scarlett's diary of her 4 months inside a women's jail is a rare, shocking account of mostly male prison officers abusing their power over women. That extract was the alleged treatment of a youth offender in a next-door cell.
She repeatedly screamed for them to stop. They folded her in two. They brought her arms up behind her back until she was screaming. She was in pain. And then the senior officer kicked her in her chest right before they closed the door. And they didn't let her out for 48 hours.
Scarlett was jailed here in HMP Eastwood Park in Gloucestershire last year for perverting the course of justice. She says male staff used disproportionate force and things like withdrawing meals as punishment. She said prisoner self-harm was rife and officers showed no compassion.
There was one lady, she had self-harmed significantly. There was a lot of blood and they didn't dress the wound. They didn't cover it up. She was bleeding and they gave her a bowl to bleed in. Overnight, they were like, there you go.
A damning inspectorate report this year said Eastwood Park had extreme levels of self-harm and acute staff shortages. It stated the number of times force had been used against women had increased significantly, and we were not confident it was always used as a last resort.
The report said the cells were appalling, dilapidated, graffitied, one was blood splattered, and providing photographs, it said that some of them had extensive scratches on the walls, which reflected the degree of trauma previous residents must have experienced. It adds no prisoner should be held in such conditions, let alone women who were acutely unwell and in great distress.
The conditions are so inhumane. You are caged for 23 hours a day. And that's if there's enough staff to even let you out for 1 hour. And in a space that I couldn't even open my arms like this. I mean, the bed was here and the wall was here. You can't even open your arms. And there's one other person in that space. That's going to drive you to some quite crazy behaviours.
A new government report has been published recognising that women prisoners have unique needs and many are living with trauma, and recommending they have better access to therapeutic services. But Scarlett says the service needs much greater reform.
It's a cage. It's being put in the crumbling building. You're watching your life fall apart, and there's nothing you can do.
Commenting on this interview, a prison service spokesperson said, "We are investing up to £14 million to improve the safety and rehabilitation of women so they can turn their backs on crime for good, including specialist self-harm training for staff, improved mental health services and help into work on release." But this former prisoner believes from her experience the whole system is not fit for purpose. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
And if you've been affected by anything in that report, you can call the Samaritans. They're on 116123 or email joe@samaritans.org. Still to come on the UK tonight, we'll have more on the record high legal migration numbers with our data and economics editor Ed Conway. And the opera classic given a Yorkshire twist, why the Barber of Seville has a whole new sound. Hello, welcome back to the UK Tonight. We're going to get more now on the migration figures released today, which reveal that net migration, the difference between those arriving in the UK and those leaving, hit a record high last year. Well, the government says the figures are unacceptable and has thought the ministers are now considering ways to limit the number of dependents that people can bring with them when they get a visa to enter the UK. Our data and economics editor Ed Conway has been digging into that data.
Some really interesting migration figures have just come through. Very striking indeed. This is showing you net migration. So the number of people coming in minus those who are leaving the country. And last time around, that's what the line looked like, very high indeed. The latest figures show it's even higher. It's even higher. It does look like it's coming down, but those numbers could well be revised. And it got up to over 700,000 in 2022. But even more striking is if you look back through history. So we're going to take that same statistic, net migration, as a percentage of the population, going all the way back to the Victorian period here. And, well, you can see the story. We have never seen anything quite like this. Actually, for most of the 19th century, people were leaving the country in net terms. But then you have this kind of period, hundreds of thousands under David Cameron, and then post-Brexit, it went through the roof. And when we just look back at those more recent numbers, OK, there's a bit of context it's worth just remembering here. Of course, 2016, you had Brexit, the EU referendum, then you had COVID, so you can probably note that period there. So, migration dropping down a lot there, a lot of people leaving as well. But then it's those new Brexit rules and new immigration rules coming in that really kickstarts that big leap in migration, in net migration. And when you look at where people are coming from or indeed going to, well, this is EU citizens. And you can see before Brexit, it was relatively strong, hundreds of thousands, and then into negative territory after Brexit. That's EU citizens leaving the UK. Then you've got UK citizens, and then consider this, non-EU citizens coming into the UK in their droves, really, faster than we've ever seen before. And the interesting thing is, if we break that down, so dig into those red bars and just look at what are the reasons that people are coming for, a lot of it is work. A lot of it is work. Actually, the second biggest chunk is work. But then you've got studies. So students, and particularly after Brexit, those new rules came in, a lot of students coming into the UK. And then you've got, well, other categories. But notably, look at this. This is Ukraine and Hong Kong. So big numbers coming in from Ukraine and Hong Kong. But it's not actually enough to explain the big leap. It's much smaller than this, much smaller than work as well. And also worth saying as well, you've got illegal immigration as well. It's quite a small slice. It's about kind of 50,000 compared to these big numbers here. But let's dig in finally to work, because it's worth just asking, where are people working? Where are they coming to work? And you've got various different strands we can break this down to. You've got temporary workers, other work as well. But if you look at skilled work, the main thing that sticks out is this. Look, it's health and care. People are coming from around the world, particularly non-EU, to work in the health system, in the NHS. That is a big part of the explanation, alongside study, for why you see those unprecedented numbers of migration. When I say unprecedented, this is really one of the most striking things we've seen in the country recently, a massive increase in the number of people coming here.
Well, joining me now to talk a bit about those numbers is Dr. Peter William Walsh, Senior Researcher at Migration Observatory. Thank you so much for joining us on the UK tonight. Were you surprised by the high numbers?
Not especially. I think the most surprising thing is I looked at the numbers first and I thought, OK, the number for the year ending June, it's higher than ever. But then what was interesting is I looked further down and we see this very substantial revision of calendar year 2022, which suggests then that we're perhaps on a downwards trajectory. But there's a big caveat there. Remember that these are provisional figures and they could be revised. We wouldn't expect them to be revised quite so largely as they were in 2022, but that is still a possibility.
So, as our data and economics editor, Ed Conway, was explaining there, these numbers are fueled by people coming into the UK for work and to study. And when he looked into the figures for work, large numbers were going into health and care.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's really striking. So we've got people coming to be doctors, nurses, but the really striking thing, care workers, so 100,000 visas going to care workers and senior care workers. And this results from a liberalisation of our immigration system last year that made it possible for what the government had previously classed as lower skilled care workers to come in. I mean, we know this is an industry that's crying out for workers, but of course, critics have observed, immigration can only ever be a short-term solution to skill shortages in that sector. And it disincentivises the government from investing more in that industry to improve pay and conditions and attract more British workers.
There's a lot of controversy and a lot of talk about the fact that many of these visas allow people from outside the UK to bring in dependents, so family members. How much is that playing into the figures? Because, you know, that's the headline grabber and that's something the government say they'll clamp down on. But is that really a large enough proportion of those numbers for us to be concerned about?
It's a decent chunk, about 150,000. About roughly half and half between students and workers. The government has already acted to restrict the ability of master's students to bring partners and children. In 2022, that was about 75,000. From January next year, it will no longer be possible for one-year master's students to bring their dependents. That will have a role in bringing down the numbers. But I think it's really important to go back to those changes, the post-Brexit immigration system, because while it was so much more restrictive for EU citizens, now net migration, more EU citizens leaving than coming in, it was actually more liberal for non-EU citizens, a lower salary threshold. People could come into work earning a lower salary. They could come into jobs that were lower skilled. Before Brexit, had to be graduate level jobs requiring degrees. Now it's A-level or equivalent education. And then under Boris Johnson, the introduction of the graduate route, the visa that allows students to stay in the UK for 2 to 3 years after graduating. So these in combination are all adding up to these figures. And it will be really interesting to see whether the government is serious about introducing what would be a reversal of policy, some restrictions on this.
Yeah, because the government have already come out and said today that, you know, they're working on getting those numbers down. In the 29-team manifesto under Boris Johnson, you know, the number being bandied around there was around 250,000. It's 3 times that. So what are the realistic options for the government in getting those numbers down? Because when it comes to work, you know, when you look at the huge number of people coming in to support the social care and the health sector in this country, you could argue, you know, don't turn off that tap. We need them at the moment, at least in the short term.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see a tweet by the outgoing Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. She said she would restrict the ability of people to bring dependents. She would restrict work migration, except for care workers. Perhaps that's not viable in the short term. It could be restricted medium to long term, but it would probably require that substantial investment in the industry to improve pay and conditions.
Dr. Peter William Walsh, Senior Researcher at Migration Observatory, really good to talk to you about those figures out today. Thank you for joining us on the UK Tonight.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now, it's the Barber of Seville, as you've never heard it before. Rossini's opera has been given a Yorkshire twist by the playwright Ian Macmillan to open the first Bradford Opera Festival. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer was at rehearsals.
A reet-good reinvention of Rossini's classic. By Eckers translating the Barber of Seville into Yorkshire been challenging, particularly for Figaro.
Weaving surprises when a bloke rises, right to the top, right to the top.
Were you familiar with the Yorkshire dialect?
My only familiarity comes with listening to cricket in India, cricket commentary, Jeffrey Boycott. Right. In Hindi in India, we have the same flat vowels without diphthongs. Yeah. But the things that stand up, like cup becomes cup, you know, so I'm trying to get those.
In part, it's hoped this is an antidote to the typically hackneyed portrayals of Yorkshire-sounding characters on stage.
I've seen too many Shakespeare plays where the thick character comes on and they give him some like yokel accent, that an accent is used to donate, it's sort of like to donate some sort of like lesser character. I do care that we do it with some integrity. Even though it's fun, even though it's interesting, it's a decent work of art with it.
Will that do it?
Nay, it's not great. Soon to leave the rehearsal rooms, the production is opening the inaugural Bradford Opera Festival, an idea which came about in 2017 after this free staging of Romeo and Juliet set out of rival ice cream vans proved popular.
If opera carries on and the demographic of people who are making it and the demographic of people who are watching it just gets narrower and narrower, it will die. If we're not doing this now, we will not have the writers, the composers to create work that is meaningful and relevant.
Well, I tell thee that it is writ. Concentrate and you'll certainly hear some lyrics which make you sit up and listen.
I didn't know about missen, this'n, and myself, yourself. And I was like, missen? This'n. And does it mean this one? You have to get into the groove. Once you're there with your vowel sounds, then yeah, it's fine. It reminds you a little bit of Russian, actually.
While daring to mess with the classic might be risky, organisers hope it's a chance to say ta-ra to the typical stuffiness often associated with opera. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Coming up on the UK Tonight, do you fancy yourself as a football manager? Of course you do. I'm going to speak to the manager of Bromley FC who wants to hire a gamer to join his backroom staff. Genuine offer. And a new car for Lewis Hamilton? The 7-time world champion addresses rumours of a possible move to Red Bull. I'm not sure if it's in that car though.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
It's turning everybody into, a crazy, violent drug addict.
How are you feeling?
I am angry. Legal abortion! It is an anti-woman agenda.
2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir? Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
I gotta be realistic. My sister's dead.
More than 4 weeks on, there's no murder weapon and no suspect. Are you going to catch this killer?
We are doing everything we can.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
They're so excited.
Severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
I've watched as whole towns were torn apart by natural disaster.
I'm alive and I'm thankful for that, but there are a lot of people who aren't.
It's not the winds people fear most here, it's the water. We take you to the heart of the stories which shape our world. Do you truly believe what you're saying?
A lot of cases that I know are reported from Ukrainian missiles themselves.
Ambassador, with respect, I think that's preposterous.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
Hello, welcome back to the UK Tonight. We're going to speak to the manager of Bromley FC about their plans to hire one lucky gamer to be part of their staff. But first, Dharmesh Chef is here with the sport. And Dharmesh, Lewis Hamilton to Red Bull, surely not.
It is very, very interesting, this story, because the Red Bull principal, Christian Horner, says that a representative of Lewis Hamilton actually approached Red Bull about the possibility of Lewis Hamilton going to Red Bull. That was earlier this year, just before Lewis Hamilton signed a 2-year extension to his Mercedes contract. But this story is claim and counterclaim. So while Christian Horner, the Red Bull principal, is claiming that, Lewis Hamilton is saying that it was the other way around, actually. And it was Horner who had done the approaching. So I guess it's one of those situations, who do you believe? But it's added a bit of spice and it's dominated the build-up ahead of the final Grand Prix of the season, which is in Abu Dhabi this weekend.
Yeah, you can misconstrue how text messages are sent, but not who sent the first one.
No.
Anyway, we'll leave that to battle them out. But, the pull for Lewis Hamilton to stay at Mercedes is to break Michael Schumacher's record, right? What are the chances of him doing that?
Well, he's on 7 world titles, as is Michael Schumacher. It currently looks Impossible, some would say. Very
Harsh,
unlikely. Very, very unlikely. If you just look at the current driver standings, Max Verstappen is over 300 points clear of Lewis Hamilton in this season's Formula One standings. And if you look at the Constructors' Championship, which would probably give a better reflection on where the teams are, Red Bull are currently 400 points plus clear of Mercedes. So it is very intriguing, this whole story. I think Lewis Hamilton has actually said that he would welcome the opportunity to race against Max Verstappen, and significantly and perhaps poignantly saying in an equal car, in an equal machine.
That's the telling
which
part,
is
isn't it?
Basically him saying Mercedes and Red Bull aren't on the same grid, as it were, just now. But as I said, it has added spice to this weekend, and it all gets underway, practice session 1 on Sky Sports Formula 1. That's from 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It looks unmissable, as is some of the other sport we have for you.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Welcome to the Roast restaurant here in central London. We are lucky enough today to be joined by 3 elite athletes. Now they're going to be cooking a cultural dish all related to their heritage. It's going to be fun. Let's go see who they are. Right, we're very lucky. We've found a gap in the training schedule of a great British Olympic athlete. Lavia Nilsson's joined us in the kitchen, cooking for us today. What have you got for us, Lavia?
So this is a traditional Sudanese dish. That's my mum's heritage. It's called mahshi in Arabic, but it's basically a stuffed vegetable dish. It's got rice, and we're doing a vegan version today with some brown lentils instead of mince meat. So yeah, really excited about it. My sister and I, we learned from our mum, the value of a home-cooked meal.
And you're sort of growing up in your household, you said your mum was Sudanese and Egyptian, and your dad was from Denmark, right? So quite a multicultural household.
Yeah, my mum, she taught us to appreciate food from every culture, mainly Sudanese food. We never sat in front of the television. We always.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Time now for a look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
An increasingly northerly wind will make it colder for most of us this weekend, bringing wintry showers to the north and east. There'll be a mainly dry evening, but South Wales and the Midlands can expect some rain. The north will see a scattering of increasingly wintry showers. Most places are going to stay dry tonight, but southern parts will see a little patchy rain moving through, while a raw northwesterly wind will bring wintry showers to exposed coastal areas, mainly northern Scotland. It's going to be cold in the north and the east, with a frost in some sheltered northern parts, but the southwest will stay mild. Tomorrow morning, quite sunny for most of us, with a stiff northerly wind bringing gales and a scattering of hail and snow showers to some eastern coasts. Southwestern parts will be cloudier with some drizzle.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, we always like to leave you with something weird and wonderful from around the UK. I think our next story is a bit of both, because we're talking football. Many of you, I'm sure, will have fancied yourself as a football manager. Most of us are armchair managers at the weekends, right? Sitting at home, thinking that you can do a better job. Well, now you might just get your chance, because Bromley FC are offering a full-time role in their backroom staff and are using the computer game Football Manager as part of the recruitment process. With a gaffer, Bromley FC manager Andy Woodman joins me now. Andy, hello.
Good evening, Sarah. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Totally intrigued by this job opportunity, because we know what it's like as a football fan. You sit in the armchair every Saturday and think you can do a better job. How's this application process going to work?
Well, I'm sure they all think they can do a better job, so we're going to see it for real. I mean, it's an opportunity for a gamer to win a competition, and then we get to an interview process, and they work alongside me and my team on a match day, week to week, day to day, and it's not a gimmick. It's really, we're going to put someone right in the coalface with us, and hopefully they can add to our team, and we will then see if it's as easy as they make out in the armchair.
Now, I've got boys at home. In fact, my husband's from Bromley, so a bit of vested interest there. And when they play the game on the TV and with the controllers, they take it so seriously as football managers, swapping out the players, the tactics. Just how seriously do you take the computer game? Because, I'm being told at home that, you know as much as a manager through playing that game. Are you saying that that's true?
Yeah, well, the angle of this is the analytical side and the data side. So we're going to add someone to our team that can give all of that insight and look at the opposition we're playing up against, give us some tactics and some information that will just help us, against our next opponents and against the opponents we've just played. When I was at Arsenal and Newcastle, we had loads of these people to hand. So at Bromley, we obviously haven't got the finances like these big clubs now. So we've got an opportunity now to bring someone in and they can work, really closely with us and be a part of our team. And I think it's really important that, this was the real message I wanted to get across when Xbox approached me to do this. I wanted to make sure that they had to really be with me day in, day out, working alongside us. So it's not just a gimmick and it's really, they can see how we work and hopefully I'm sure they're going to offer something to us as well.
So it's a proper job, this competition. Is it a winner takes all, or will you have a list of candidates to choose from? And what other attributes might you be looking for that you might not learn about them through gaming?
Yeah, I think it's going to be whittled down to 6, and then I do an interview process with the 6, and then we take one from that. So I'm pretty sure it's got to be someone that can put up with the pressure of results, a results-driven business of football. And obviously, I want someone that's going to come in and add something to us rather than just sit there and not say nothing. They really want them to buy into what we're doing. Yeah. And I have no doubt they will add to us. I'm really excited about this opportunity for someone and obviously excited for Bromley Football Club.
Yeah, how are Bromley Football Club doing at the moment?
Yeah, we're okay. We're up third position at the moment. Although we had a bit of a tricky night the other night, so we're having a good sort of half season at the moment. And then hopefully, if we get promoted, it'll be all down to the gamer and nothing to do with me.
I love it, Andy. Well, we wish you the best of luck with your search. I'm sure you'll have a little bit to do with it. That's Andy Woodman, the manager of Bromley FC. Get your applications in. Get your gaming thumbs ready. That's all from the UK Tonight. You can catch up on the highlights on our webpage. We'll be back on Monday at 8 o'clock. We'll see you then.